is an excerpt from Terence Rattingan's play Browning version. It is set in a school. Now, the story is about a young boy, a school-going boy, who's a boy of 16, and about two teachers, right? Mr. Crocker Harris and Mr. Frank. Now, the two teachers are absolutely contradictory to each other, because Mr. Frank is a young one, he's a young teacher with having a different thought process, a different frame of mind for children. His attitude towards students is absolutely different. And on the other hand, we have Mr. Crocker Harris. Mr. Crocker Harris is an old teacher who is about to retire. He's a strict one. He actually deals with students with a very stern hand, and children are scared of him, right? The story begins when we understand that Taplow, the student, he is waiting for Mr. Crocker Harris. Mr. Crocker Harris has assigned him, has called him because of some extra additional work, as he was absent. As a punishment, he has called him, right? Though it's an off day, it's an holiday, but still Taplow has been called by his teacher, right? So let's read out the summary and understand what it is all about. Shall we start? Akshita, please read it.
Okay, ma'am. The Browning version. This is an excerpt from the Terence Rattigan's play Browning version. The scene is set in a good school. Taplow, a boy of 16, has come in to do extra work for his master, Mr. Crocker Harris. He has not yet arrived. Another master, Frank, younger in years than Mr. Crocker Harris, finds Taplow waiting. Incidentally, is the last day of the term. Taplow is a student in the lower fifth form. He does not know whether he will get his division all right or not. He tells Frank that Mr. Crocker Harris does not tell them the result like the other master. Frank informs Taplow that there is a rule that form results should only be announced by the headmaster on the last day of the term. Taplow say that no one except Mr. Crocker Harris pays attention to it. Frank then asks Taplow.
Akshita, please give a pause here. Now, Taplow is a student in the lower fifth form. He does not know whether he will get his division all right or not. He is actually scared because this is one threatening which Mr. Crocker Harris generally gives to all his students, right? So Taplow, this little boy, is scared whether he will get his result or not. And he tells Mr. Frank that Mr. Harris does not tell them that the results like other masters. The other teachers tell them the result, but Mr. Crocker Harris doesn't give the result till the last day of the term, right? And he says this is a rule which only Mr. Crocker Harris follows, and till that time, because the teacher has given him a punishment, he has to follow the commands, otherwise his result will be put on hold. So he is scared, he's threatened by the teacher somewhere, and he's there. Please continue further.
Frank then asks Taplow what he would like to study if his result is favorable. Taplow indicates his preference for science. Frank remarks that they get all these slackers in science. Taplow disagrees with him and says that he is extremely interested in science. Frank observes.
Akshita, just a second, just give a pause. Yeah, I think yeah, better now. It's visible clearly on the screen. Please continue now.
Frank observes frankly that he is not interested in the science. He is to teach. Taplow, on the other hand, finds the study of Greek play, Agamemnon Muck. His objection is to the way the play is taught to them. Just a lot of Greek words strung together and 50 lines if one gets them wrong. Taplow answers show that he is feeling a bit bitter. Frank is surprised that Taplow has come in to do extra work even on the last day of school. Taplow says that he missed a day last week when he was ill, so he has to put in extra work. The weather is quite fine, and he might be playing golf. He knows that Mr. Crocker Harris must be quite busy then, as he is leaving the school for good the next day.
Okay, give a pause here, please. Now, as and when the conversation continues between Taplow and Mr. Frank realizes that Taplow was really feeling very bitter. He was feeling bitter because it was an off day when everybody else had gone to play golf, and he also generally uh, plays golf on a weekday off when it's week off. But that particular day he was not able to, because he was called by his teacher, Mr. Crocker Harris. Though it was the last day of the school, it was the last day of the term, but perhaps the boy was scared that his result might be put on hold. He might not get the result till the time he goes, right? So he is there. So we find Taplow being a bit irritated. He is feeling bitter for somewhere for the teacher. It He was called there for some extra work because he has missed a day last week, and as a punishment, as a compensation for that particular day, he was called here on the last day, right? So obviously the boy is not very comfortable coming. He's not very happy coming, but he has to. Please continue further.
The conversation then shifted to Mr. Crocker Harris. Taplow had asked him the previous day if he had given him a good division, and he said that he had given Taplow exactly what he deserved, no less and certainly no more. Taplow is afraid that he might have marked him down rather than up for taking extra work. The man is hardly human. Frank then encourages Taplow to repeat the remark of Mr. Crocker Harris. Frank does not find his imitation up to the mark and asks him to read his escalates and be quiet. Frank suggests to
Okay,
Taplow.
wait, please wait after reading one stanza. The conversation then shifts to Mr. Crocker Harris. Taplow had asked him the previous day if he had given him a good division, and he had said that he had given Taplow exactly what he deserved, no less and certainly no more. So now the discussion was about Mr. Crocker Harris on being asked how much marks, how much division he had given him. So he simply replies back, Mr. Crocker Harris had replied that he had given Taplow exactly what the child deserves, nothing better than it and nothing worse than that. So Taplow is afraid that he might have marked him down rather than up for taking extra work. So he says that this man is hardly human. He is having no feelings, no sentiments, no sympathy for anybody. So Frank then encourages Taplow to repeat the remarks of Mr. Crocker Harris. Now, Taplow, as a child, he is imitating the teacher. Like you people generally do that, right? You people are very good at and very fond of doing this. You very well imitate how teachers walk, how they talk, how they scold, the statements and the liners which they use while scolding, right? So he just imitated once Mr. Crocker Harris in front of Mr. In front of Mr. Frank. So Mr. Frank tells him to repeat it, and then he didn't like it actually, and he said, ask him to read Aeschylus and be quiet, and then he scolds him to be quiet, because obviously it's like if a teacher is doing asking a child to imitate another teacher, so in a way he or she is somewhere boosting up the child to insult that teacher, which is not a good thing for a teacher to do. Please continue further.
Frank suggests to Taplow that he might cut the class and play golf as Mr. Crocker has not turned up. Taplow is shocked at the suggestion as he can't think of ever doing so. Frank advises Mr. Crocker Harris for the effect he has on the boys. They seem scared to death of him. Taplow say that Croc is not a sadist like the other master. He would not be so frightening if he were. It would then seem that he had some feeling. He seemed dry like a nut and hates people to like him. Still, Taplow likes him. Sometimes Mr. Crocker Harris sees it, and he shrivels up even more.
Okay, Now here we find the difference here in this child. The boy is a 16 years old boy. He's irritated because on a week off he has been called to do some extra work just because of a punishment for a weekday off. Right? He has to compensate for that. When he might have enjoyed himself, played with his friends, he might have played golf and had a good time with his friends, but he is here. So obviously the child is somewhere not feeling good. He somewhere has those bitter feelings. His result is not yet given to him. But then we find that Taplow also likes him, likes Mr. Crocker Harris as a teacher. Frank suggests to Taplow that he might cut the class and play golf, as Mr. Crocker Harris had not turned up. Now, Mr. Frank, though, gives a suggestion to Taplow that you might skip because Mr. Harris is not there right now, so you can leave and you can go and have fun. You can play golf. But Taplow is shocked at the suggestion, as he can never even think of doing so. So he is so much scared also. He says, I cannot do that thing. On this part, Mr. Frank envies Mr. Crocker Harris for the effect he has on the boy. That this teacher is having a great impact on the children. Children take him so much seriously that even in his absence, they're not thinking of cheating him. So somewhere they are obviously their colleagues. So somewhere he envies him. He feels that he has that feeling of jealousy. God, how much serious the children take his words and how much obedient they are towards him. So they seem scared to death of him. Taplow says that Croc is not a sadist like other masters. He would not be so frightening if he were. It would then seem that he had some feelings. He seemed dry like a nut and hates people to like him. He says, so Taplow here says that he seems to be very, unsympathetic kind of a person, but actually he's a good one. But he is like a dry nut, and he hates when somebody tries to shower love upon him or somebody tries to flatter him. He doesn't appreciate that, right? So still Taplow likes him. Sometimes Mr. Crocker Harris sees it and he shrivels up even more. And when Mr. Crocker Harris notices this thing, that Taplow still likes him beside all his no stern nature, strictness, the punishments which he gave, the unsympathetic attitude which he shows towards the boys. Still, when Taplow likes him, he doesn't like Taplow for this. Please continue further. Scroll down the screen, please.
Taplow then relates an incident when his master related one of his classical jokes in the class. Nobody laughed as they couldn't understand it. Taplow laughed as he knew he had meant it as a fun. He felt sorry for his master for having made such a poor joke. Taplow has forgotten the joke, but offers to imitate the reaction of Mr. Crocker Harris. The laughter of Mr. Frank encourages Taplow to do so. Frank seemed to enjoy the joke and asked Taplow to tell it to others.
Okay, now Taplow is just reciting an incident when his master related one of his classical jokes in the class. When Mr. Crocker Harris recited a joke in the class, the joke was actually not at all funny, so nobody laughed at it. Now Taplow laughed at the joke as he knew that he had meant it as funny, because he believed that for the teacher it was funny, so let me laugh at it, right? So he felt sorry for his master for having made such a poor joke. Taplow has forgotten the joke. Taplow doesn't remember the joke, but offers to imitate the reaction of Mr. Crocker Harris. So on this, Taplow says, I don't remember the joke. I can't tell you the joke which he narrated, which he recited, but I can definitely imitate how Mr. Crocker Harris reacted on that. And he showed that. The laughter of Mr. Frank encourages Taplow to do so. Frank seems to enjoy the joke and asks Taplow to tell it to others, right? So later on, he told the joke and he tells that you can tell the joke to others also. So Mr. Frank was in a very cool mood, and he was talking to a child in that friendly, in that candid manner, and he was enjoying it. Let's continue further, please.
In the meanwhile, Millie Crocker Harris Center. Frank and Taplow are surprised to see her. Taplow is afraid that she might have overheard the joke. If she told her husband, Taplow division would be in danger. Frank dismisses his fear. Mile tells Taplow that her husband is at the Bergers and might be there quite a time. She says that if she were Taplow, she would go. Tableau is filled with doubt. He says that Mr. Crocker Harris had especially asked him to come. Mile then suggested that he might run away for a quarter of an hour and come back. Tableau is still uncertain and wonders what will happen if he gets there before his arrival. Mile offers to take the blame. She then hands him over a prescription and asks him to go to the chemist and get it made up. Thus, he can do a job for him. Tableau agrees and leaves the room.
Now, when they were having a good discussion about Mr. Crocker Harris, he was imitating his reaction. They were laughing and giggling. That was the time when Millie Crocker Harris, that is Mrs. Crocker Harris, she enters into the room. Now, Frank and Tableau are surprised to see her. They both were not expecting her at all. So it was like a sudden visit. So they were shocked to see her there. Tableau is afraid that she might have overheard their joke. So Tableau was scared that their conversation or the joke which he was telling Mr. Frank might have been overheard by Millie Crocker Harris. If she told her husband, Taplow's division would be in danger. So Taplow's division, his result might be in danger again. Frank dismisses his fear. Millie tells Taplow that her husband is at the Bursars and might be there quite a time. She says that if she were Taplow, she would go. Now we find here Millie Crocker Harris perhaps not as strict and stern like her husband. So she simply asks Taplow, why are you here? So Taplow says that I'm waiting for Mr. Crocker Harris. He has called me for some extra work. On this, she says that he's busy with somebody right now. And if it was, she tells the boy that if it was me instead of you, I would have left. Right? So he says that Mr. Crocker Harris had especially asked him to come. So Millie then suggests that he might run away for a quarter of an hour and come back. So Millie says, okay, if he has called you, then you have plenty of time. For a quarter of an hour, you can go and then you can return back again. Taplow is still uncertain and wonders what will happen. Taplow is still not sure. So you can see what an impact the teacher is having upon the child. Even when the teacher's wife herself is telling her that he is going to take time, meanwhile you can go, and if it was I instead of you, I would have done the same thing. Still the boy is not taking that step. He's not daring to leave that place because he has been called by the teacher for some extra work, so he wants to complete that work and then he wants to go. One problem is that his result might be put on hold. That is the one major threat he is having. And the other one, maybe perhaps he knows his teacher very well. Okay, so Taplow is still uncertain and wonders what will happen if he gets there before his arrival. Millie offers to take the blame. So Millie takes the blame. Millie says, okay, if something goes wrong, I will be responsible. I will take the blame upon me. She then hands him over a prescription of medicine. She hands him over and asks him to go to the chemist and get it made up. And she says that go and get this medicine made up. Thus he can do a job for him. Taplow agrees and leaves the room because he was of the opinion that the teacher has called for some additional work, right? If he's not there, then what to do? How should I leave the place? And he might turn up at any moment. Then what would happen? Then he would scold me and he would put my result on hold. So he is not willing to take any kind of risk with Mr. Crocker Harris because he is very well aware of Mr. Crocker Harris's nature, right? So Millie, being Mr. Crocker Harris's wife, she finds how the boy was scared and he was not willing to move at all till the time he meets Mr. Harris. So she simply states that, okay, you have been called here for some additional work, so you can do me a favor that you can go to the chemist shop and get me this medicine made up, right? So the boy agrees and he immediately runs. Now, here we finish with the summary of this chapter. Is the story clear to everybody?